Alright, we're past the halfway point in the 2020s, so dear God, the march of time marches on. Time to talk about music that came out thus far in the decade. Not going to be talking about every single album and LP from this time period that I heard for the sake of at least some brevity. And of course, this is still going to be way longer than it should be, but oh well. Not going to be any real methodical rhymeries in here, just going to go by artist, genre, and vibes rather than chronologically. Alright, let's just get into it. After feeling like Distance Over Time was missing something, probably the 10-minute plus epic Dream Theater does the best. A View from the Top of the World somewhat brought it back. Of course, the title track Closer clocking in at 20 minutes of proggy goodness was good to have. The Alien being the first Grammy win for Dream Theater feels lukewarm in that they have so many better songs, but that's not to say I dislike the song. It's got some melodies that harken back to Black Clouds and Silver Linings, and the 9-minute runtime of a high-tempo banger is welcome. Answering the Call is a great main riff that starts and ends the song, done both by Petrucci and Rudess. I can't tell for sure whether I am ignoring some evidence counter to the contrary, but one feeling I can't shake is that LaBrie's cadence in most songs they have done since at least Distance Over Time gets really samey. And make no mistake, I'm not one of those commenters that's always ragging on LaBrie. He is genuinely one of my favorite vocalists of all time. Just feels like he's using the same pattern on the average song they make nowadays. Transcending Time is a good example of this off the album as well, in that I really like the melody and vibe they're going for mostly, but the vocals just have this syncopated pattern that seems to be about what is used on multiple other songs they make. His range not being what it used to doesn't help either, but can't really do much about that. Got to see them in concert recently again, and frankly it's impressive what he can still do despite his age and how often he seems to have throat issues. Need to listen to this and Parasomnia a few more times side by side to see which of the two albums I like more. If the 2010s blossomed my obsession for Dream Theater, the 2020s similarly brought Dance Gavin Dance into my life. I really liked how, despite being late to the party, having not been in the loop for their first 14 or so years of work, it seemed like the releases they were putting out in recent times had memorable bangers. Normally bands are thought to lose all creativity by this point in their careers, not that there aren't those who do think their more recent work is more shallow. I will say that with time to get acquainted with all their work, the highest highs definitely lie further back in their catalog. Here's where I would start listing off everything I love from Everything I Say Is Royal Ocean through Artificial Selection, but we're here to talk about the 2020s. In 2020, DGD gave us Afterburner. I feel like my sentiments still change daily on this stuff, but I can say somewhat confidently that Afterburner is at the bottom of the tier rungs when it comes to DGD for me. Prisoner is a cool opener in its own right, but pales a bit in comparison to most everything that came before. Lyrics Lie is super catchy, you gotta love it when a song mentions Kyrgyzstan. I can see why people get turned off by Calentamiento Global, but I just think it's fun, plain and simple. Three Wishes is a good meme.
Multiple stab wounds! Multiple stab wounds, yeah!
1 in a Million is a funky romp. Love the reggae bits and final verses going from
This is where you blame it on the weather, or blame it on the devil, or blame it on whomever. You suck either way.
into John Screams.
I can't believe this, I'm a fetus, I'm a baby boy. My legs are creases, I can't reach the count of my toys.
On Parody Catharsis. Say Hi is some unique chord and note changes in the chorus. Nothing Shameful is another fun high tempo song. Into the Sunset being a mellow ending is nice in some ways, but also leaves a bit to be desired. If I'm not comparing it to stuff like Turn Off the Lights, I'm watching Back to the Future Part 2, then I can say I do enjoy it. The chorus kind of slaps in a lo-fi sort of way. Maybe it's cope for the fact that I bought 3 vinyl copies of it, but Jackpot Juicer was more exciting for me than Afterburner. I understand and agree that Untitled 2 does not hold a candle to Untitled from Downtown Battle Mountain. I mean, come on, nothing beats that into And I Told Him I Invented Times New Roman. However, the full intro of Untitled 2 into Cream of the Crop is amazing, and I don't understand the vocalized distaste for it I've seen perusing the subreddit. Synergy also slaps. This record leans the furthest away from its metal roots for sure, as heard by the sounds from songs like For the Jeers, One Man's Cringe, Feels Bad Man, Long Nights in Jail, etc. Not to say I dislike them, but it does require accepting the work for what it is. Yes, I know it's a little, well, cringe to see a song with the word cringe in the title in 2022, but the sound is still nice and it makes for YTP material. Love the energy off of Polka Dot Dobbins. Pray to God for Your Mother is another favorite of mine off this. Not a huge fan of Swallowed by Eternity and Have a Great Life as the last couple songs, as they're relatively low energy. Don't get me wrong, I love me some melancholic or epic slow burn endings, but Have a Great Life feels a little undercooked. 2023 and 2024 they released a few more singles, and I've at least liked all of them. If I were to rank them, it probably goes War Machine 4, Straight from the Heart 3, Speed Demon 2, and Ghost of Billy Royalton 1. Ghost is just such a moving tribute to Tim. The vocals by both Tillian and Andrew are tear-jerking. Kinda puts a damper on Speed Demon and Straight from the Heart given the lyrical content in those, but the music goes hard either way. Finally got to see them live recently, and I would also recommend checking out the artists they had opening for them this time, Dwellings, Belmont, and the Home Team. Also at that concert they played some of their even more recent singles that are going to be on their next album later this year, and liked those as well too, check them out. Really wish I had made more of an effort to listen to Hail the Sun when I first discovered them on the Rocksmith 2014 hidden track 8 Ball Coroner's Pocket. Finally started listening to them with regularity around the end of 2018 and got to see them in concert first in 2023. Absolutely incredible playing and cool guys from the interactions I've had with them. It's hard for me to rank their albums, but their 2021 work, New Age Filth, probably sits in their top 3 for me. Domino's chaotic melodies and softer passages make for a fun roller coaster every time, and the song is just one of many examples of their ability to craft stories of tumultuous relationships. Solipsism goes so hard and might be my favorite off the album, though maybe that's biased slightly by their presence when performing it live. Misfire's spacey chords moving into fast licks and then incredibly catchy chorus make it a favorite for me as well. Major Mark is an emotional slow burn for the midway point of the record that has become a mainstay for their live shows. The chorus of Parasitic Cleanse is an amazing cry for the desire to understand existential quandaries. Divine Intertention fights with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's Petro-Dragonic Apocalypse for my favorite album of 2023. Tunnel Vision Alibi is perfect as a super high energy opener. The chords and melodies hit hard, and the chorus practically begs to be sung along to.
And I could never slow down, even if I burn out. I wonder if we're gonna rest. It's the one who cast the stone.
Mind Rider has a cool sound to it in that the melody sounds both dissonant and not at the same time. an ambiguity and uneasiness that Hail the Sun is no stranger to. Chunker is an anthem to catharsis and unhealthy thoughts regarding frustration towards sources of suffering oneself and others face. 60-minute Session Blocks also has a fun chorus with the paradoxical lyrics of
I'll never change. I am the way I fluctuate.
the urge to sing along continues with Maladapted.
So I finally stop. Let go of the wheel. The more I give up, the better I feel.
In My Dreams Into I Saw You Hanging is a captivating two-parter of introspection on the meaning of our dreams, our emotions and experiencing of those emotions, and the connections or lack thereof between each of these. Seems like Tithe has also become a mainstay for their concerts now as a cry against the abuse of power by religious leaders and institutions. Under the Floor presents a dissonant and haunting end to the project. Learned about plenty of cool bands from going to Hail the Sun concerts, so I'll list off a few of them here quick too. Got to talk to the singers of Being as an Ocean and Makari, cool guys. Sizik from Makari was giving out signed Pokemon cards, so that's bonus points. Some others I got written down or checked out a bit more were Kaunashi, Origami Button, Body Thief, and Absolute Forms. Had I listened to Memory Palace when I learned intervals existed through heading to a Hail the Sun show, it may well have been my favorite of 2024. Vibrant progressive metal instrumentals across the album that reach super emotional heights on tracks like Lacuna. Love these guys alongside Animals as leaders and Arch Echo for providing the world with instrumentation that intrigues the mind and touches the soul. Adventurer put out Pacifica and also did a collaboration with Animal Jam. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's best release in the 2020s so far is Petrojagonic Apocalypse, in my mind. Motor Spirit is a fast-paced intro to the concept piece of the spiral of global warming due to carbon emissions and a refusal to cut back on machines powered by fossil fuels. The narrative takes a creative turn with songs like Witchcraft, introducing humans trying to address damages through magic instead of reductions in the source of harm in the first place. Pretty applicable commentary on the tendency of us going with adaptive rather than mitigative changes for a variety of reasons, mostly boiling down to profit seeking by companies and the difficulty of getting enough political momentum to enact wide-sweeping changes in infrastructure. The minor scale used in Witchcraft certainly evokes imagery of exotic means being sought out.
Crucifixion, can end this wrong. Bible burn with aerosol witchcraft.
Gila Monster introduces the lizard, which will later become the dragon. Love the chanting and rhyming Gila with Godzilla. Dragon's intro melody captures the mystique and chaos of this part of the story. The base album ends with Flamethrower, detailing the destruction wrought now by the dragon in a planet already suffering from irreversible climate change. But the bonus track on vinyl takes it further, with an unnerving summary narration of the desperate attempts by magic users to quell the environmental disaster, only to accidentally create a dragon which devours them and anything else it can find. Other than Petrojagonic, I liked the variety present on Omnium Gatherum and Ice 5 off of Ice Death Planet's Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. There's lots of stuff to chug through with King Gizzard, so I'll get to it eventually. Scourge of the Offspring by Cal Decapitation was one of my favorite songs of 2023. Of course, the riffing and beats are blasting during the verses, but the chorus is pure catharsis under a haunting guitar and vocal melody about the damages of unbridled capitalism and material and population growth. Malthusianism is a bit problematic when taken as a main ideology in that it can accommodate and allow classism and racism, but the basal idea of the damages that excess causes is something to be made aware of nonetheless. Hey Du Borealis is a great modern record from thrash veterans Creator. The title track hits hard instrumentally and through its lyrical themes of how messages of hatred continue to rear their heads. Midnight Sun is another punchy riff with an unnerving chorus. Dying Planet is not a hopeful ending piece, but does articulate a general sense of the destruction facing at least our human world if trends continue to worsen. Wings of Rage is a re-recording of Higher Than the Sky on it, which is cool as I do love that song of theirs. Some sick guitar solos pepper the album, such as the slow crescendoing one on A Nameless Grave, the tapping one on Chasing the Twilight Zone, the high-octane melodic one on Blame It on the Truth. I often forget what this album is like, but find myself slipping back into it easily on re-listens. For Those Who Wish to Die is a bit of an awkward sounding closer, I think, but the overall album is good. Resurrection Day is probably my favorite of the 2020s work Rage has put out. The intro almost sounds like the Coheed and Cambria Amory Wars motif. Virginity has a fun chorus. Monetary Gods giving criticism to unfettered capitalism is always appreciated. I liked After Lifelines more on re-listen than the first time through. It all kind of blended together in a forgettable way the first time, but I appreciate the dynamics present a bit more on re-listen. The theming being largely around the impending doom of the human race due to environmental degradation and profit-seeking is depressing. Water Wars and Lifelines are just some examples. But the commentary is poignant and tries to portray glimmers of hope with brighter melodies and solos and power fantasy declarations, like in Justice Will Be Mine. Ghosts Impera, as the title suggests, focuses around the concept of empires and their rising and falling. Musically, this manifests as the same melody starting off the project as the one ending the project. Well, if you think doing the loop thing like Octavarium is going to make me like this, you'd be correct. Kaiserion has an amazing energy to it as the first song after the intro segment. The bright guitar tapping, piercing arpeggios, and shift in structure for the bridge are magical. Spillways captures attention straight away with the piano and short yet echoey drums, and then evolves into a glam rock banger that gets stuck in your head in a good way. The atmosphere gets a bit more ambiguous and ominous at the mid and later points of the record with songs like Watcher in the Sky. I found it funny how much Fantano hated 20s. It's a funny song for sure, and just because it's prescient to political issues we are facing does not guarantee that it's good, but I still find enjoyment in it. Griftwood has a chorus I can't help but sing along to every time.
If you wanna see fire, and never ever suffer again.
Darkness at the Heart of My Love kind of gives off Hollow Knight vibes, what with the clean guitar tone reminding me of the Sea of Tears melody and the project as a whole heading towards the ruins of an empire. Of course, Respite on the Spital Fields is amazing as the conclusion to the narrative through its lyrical descriptions of the slow demise of a kingdom, and as already mentioned, the epic return of the melody that started off the story to do it all over again. I'm liking Skeletor so far. Ghost really does have a penchant for writing immediately memorable melodies, hooks, and choruses. Peacefield gives off strong Journey Separate Ways vibes and has a strong bridge and solo. Lacrima feels like a return to some of their older style with the heavy main riff, while also embodying their more recent work through the brighter chorus. Satanized verses have a haunting vibe that leans slightly towards hopeful feelings as they progress, and then releases into a fun chorus. De Profundis Borealis and Umbra are further examples of Ghost's ability to marry prog and glam. Excelsis ends the album with a dark and uncertain tone. fitting for the message of things not lasting forever. While a good concept to explore, it seems a bit repetitive considering this was also a key part of the message on Impera. The delivery and framing is different enough to still feel impactful in its own way, though. Unto Others makes me think of 80s post-punk while also delving into heavier metal riffs too. I enjoyed both their 2021 Strength and 2024 Never Neverland. Franco's deep vocals fit the tone of the project perfectly, and he shows a bit of dynamicism with occasional short growls and grunts, similarly to Typo Negative. They have a cool Hells for Children cover on Strength and Pet Cemetery cover on Never Neverland. Butterfly is a decent start for Never Neverland, displaying the moody tone of the project. Time Goes On has a Hanabie Hey Listen soundbite at the start. Trying to tell us the Ocarina of Time is like 30 years old or something, huh? Raigeki, is that a Yu-Gi-Oh reference? And love the catchy Astronoid albums are always a spacey, floaty experience. Radiant Bloom is no exception, but I focus like 95% of my attention on this record onto the Eyes track, if its use in 2 of my YTPs at this point gives any indication. The loud yet whispery vocals of the ethereal guitars and synths transitioning from the intro into the more punchy verse riff, and of course that sweeping solo just do it for me. The rest of the album I do like, but most of what I have to say just goes into this song. Well, Time 2 released, and it's not Time 1. Big surprise, something teased for more than 10 years and going to match the masterpiece that came before it. I mean, I guess Psychonauts 2 pulled it off, but I digress. I do still enjoy what Time 2 brings to the table though. Yari really seems to like that stereotypical Eastern tone as is cropped up in past Winter Sun albums, but it is utilized most often to date in Time 2. Fields of Snow, the instrumental starting track, uses it for the synths that ease us into the project. The Way of Fire kicks up the tempo into a classic melodic death and folk metal sprint. The style of earlier projects shines through in the song as the solos and riffs call back to the self-titled and Time 1, while also throwing in a few new loops. Though a song being over 10 minutes won't guarantee that I love it, there are enough hooks to keep me happy as they chug along. Ominous Clouds is a cool ambient guitar piece, but I also find the tone used for it kinda strange. It gets shreddy, but the tone is usually that used for when Winter Sun is using long sustained notes to build tension and emote melancholy. The track still does this to an extent, and it's interesting to hear the tone used with this different type of playing, but it does feel a little out of place still. Storm takes an epic yet swift approach to the musical narrative, nice energy. Silver Leaves picks up where Ominous Clouds left off and makes heavy use of that Eastern tone. It has a good main melody, but does not stray very far from it for the majority of the track. Centrism may be cringed, but I was more middle of the road on Avenged Sevenfold's Life is But a Dream than Fantano's 0 out of 10 or Bradley Hall's 10 out of 10. The album does a legitimately great job of establishing mood and theming. The Folgers ad song reference is funny and contributes to ideas of loss of sincerity and meaning on following tracks like Mattel. Nobody's tapping section makes you feel like you're aimlessly floating in space. Ordinary being a blatant Daft Punk Get Lucky tribute is strangely fitting within the larger musical structure of the project when nearing the end of it. All in all, I think they did a fine job of crafting an immersive atmosphere and theming around existentialism. I Disagree was an amazing foray into metal for Poppy. I had heard about her before just scrolling YouTube and seeing Film Theory did an episode on her years ago, though I never watched it. So I was pretty surprised to see, oh, she's doing metal now. Concrete is such a banger of an opening. Quick dissonant licks, major chords with sickly sweet lyrics juxtaposed alongside self-destructive ones, a couple breakdowns, finishing off with an unapologetically well poppy chorus and guitar solo. Got to see her live for Avenged Sevenfold, and that taught me Concrete is just as good of a closer as it is an opener for a set. The catchiness is further displayed in the choruses of the title track and Fill the Crown. Fill the Crown also captures the experimental and dissonant elements of the project with the electronic bits and then keeps things moving with simple chugging riffs. Blood Money is an unsubtle bashing of hypocrisy in the church and more generally towards a society that tries to entrench itself in religious dogma to ignore injustices. Softer moments in Nothing I Need and Sick of the Sun bring even more variety and depth to the album. Don't Go Outside is a great conclusion, appealing to the prog nerd in me with callbacks to lyrical motifs earlier in the record. Negative Spaces hasn't left as big of an impression on me yet, but it also hasn't been out as long, so that's probably at least part of the reason. I still very much enjoyed it. New Way Out is catchy, as to be expected from Poppy at this point. Songs like Have You Had Enough and The Cost of Giving Up recall Linkin Park and Alina Siegman. I'm a sucker for trance elements in songs, so Crystallize is a really fun one. Vital has an infectious chorus. My thoughts on this versus I Disagree kind of boil down to right now liking the narrative and theming of I Disagree more, while Negative Spaces works well as a compilation of bangers, both of which are structures that make for great works of art. The other one was a pretty enjoyable release from Baby Metal. Glad to see they're still at it after more than a decade since they started. Metal Kingdom is a good opener despite being a bit of a slow burner anthem. Favorite off of this is probably Believing. It's a nice genty main riff and pre-chorus with some high note and pinch harmonic accents. And then of course the chorus is just super fun to sing along to. Mirror Mirror has a fun trancey melodic synth attack. Divine Attack Shingeki gives power metal vibes. I need to listen to more of Electric Callboy after hearing their collab with them on the song Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Was also super exciting to see Bloodywood make the song Back Off with them. To give some thoughts on Bloodywood next, it's cool to see the new metal style being further pushed with Indian aesthetics. Cool to see songs calling out misogyny and fascism when not only Indian but worldwide culture as a whole is facing upticks in such harmful ideologies. The more masculine presenting role models we can get to counter right-wing grifters and anti-intellectual influences, the better. Danadan off Rakshak is a pretty good example of this vibe. New Delhi starts off fun with the catchy Hayabol, and they keep up the groovy grooves throughout that album. Baby Metal coming close by for their most recent tour was amazing in its own right, but learning about Scene Queen was a welcome addition to the collection thanks to her opening for them. 18 Plus is as catchy as it is an important reminder to reflect on toxic elements existent in every music genre and culture, including the supposedly revolutionary and non-conforming metal scene. You're going to find misogyny, sexual misconduct, or issues of any and all manner wherever you go. And it's good to call that out while also showing you clearly love the art and style despite the improvements that need to happen. Something something, Winston Churchill, John Stuart Mill, Pokemon Sword and Shield Tree. Call acts like Baby Metal or Scene Queen just gimmicks if you want, I guess. Still fun. Nice to have some camp with songs like Mill for Barbie and Ken. More on the topic of camp and fun, Nanowar of Steel was a great discovery for me as one of the openers on a Dragon Force tour. The love for the bands and genres they are satirizing comes through so well. Dislike to False Metal was a fun album, and Afraid to Shoot into the Eyes of a Stranger in a Strange Land is, as it sounds, A strangely coherent fan service hodgepodge of Iron Maiden. Love it. Waiting for the Scene Queen opener had plenty of Era playing over the speakers, which was nice to hear as I've loved Era since seeing them on the 2018 Summer Slaughter tour. The self-titled and Cure were both enjoyable, though I do often have trouble remembering individual tracks from them besides Snowblood and Cure. Also playing in the background before the show was Counterparts. Hadn't listened to them beforehand, but checked out a eulogy for those still here later, and quite liked it. Some good metalcore with the requisite melodic guitar melodies and sweeps, screams, and breakdowns. Warp Speed Warriors has some fun parts to it, but nothing tops Power the Triforce for me from Dragon Force this decade. Yeah, it's fan servicey as hell, sure, but I love it. So glad I got to experience it live not once, but twice. The video game cabinets, the art display, the cuckoos being tossed around, pure fun. A concept album set in a nuclear and magical post-apocalypse? Sounds like fun, and indeed it is. Gloryhammer's return to the Kingdom of Fife regales tales of battles against goblin armies, sacred weapons, and nefarious wizards. Fun camp alongside fast riffs, epic chants, and crazy solos. Love the concluding song calling back to the beginning for narrative completion. Makes me feel bad for the goblins, but hey, at least there's Necrogoblicon to give us some more great melodeath with goblins as the protagonists. Haven't listened multiple times to Curse of the Crystal Coconut yet, but have done so with Seventh Rum of a Seventh Rum and Voyage of the Dead Marauder. They're more of what Ailstorm has been doing, references to historical sailors and fantastical pirate adventures of their own creation alike. They still write catchy hooks and melodies and get laughs out of me with premises like piracy on the rivers of Saskatchewan and Uzbekistan. Think I latched on to more tracks from Judas Priest's Invincible Shield than their previous record Firepower, though I have enjoyed both. Panic Attack is a fun opener with a simple melodic lick transitioning into heavier Priest riffage. The title track keeps the speed up. Escape from Reality has a somewhat catchy chorus. Giant in the Sky feels kind of weird to me as the closer, as it doesn't seem much more epic than any of the other tracks. The "You Will Never Die" line does work alright in this conclusive sense, I suppose, though. I find myself scrolling Reddit more often than I should, but hey, sometimes something good comes out of it, like learning about the cadre of new wave of traditional heavy metal bands that are out there. Some that I've taken the time to listen to a fair bit so far include Demon Bitch and Traveler. The Maiden template's done really well by both of these. Always great to hear traditional heavy metal iterated on by newer artists, and a pleasant surprise was hearing it being done even by a group of young Indonesian women. Voice of Basaprot, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Make sure each of the members showcases their skills on full display with groovy bass lines, solid riffs and solos, and powerful drums. The lyrical and musical themes blend to show respect and critique for the culture they grew up in. The world is increasingly globalized and interconnected, allowing for heavy metal to influence even places with local cultures that might dissuade it, i.e. the strict religious elements of Indonesian society. They clearly do still love where they come from on some level, they just also want to tout the importance of freedom of expression, acceptance, and change. Both their 2023 Ratas and 2025 Transisi have great tracks formed of their own spin on the style reminiscent of Maiden and Priest. Born Again by Brideear brings some traditional and power metal vibes alongside J-rock and metal compositional tendencies, though I would not say as noticeable or prominent as some of the other artists of this ilk like Galnerius, Daisuke Shwatari, or Bloodstained Child. Every element is so well crafted on this project. Punchy traditional riffs and guitar harmonies, mostly clean vocals with a growl every now and then, lyrics in both English and Japanese, the occasional solo bass lick, and soaring solos. Rumble of Thunder was more of what makes The Who great. Bluesy rock combined with traditional Mongolian instrumentation, vocalization, and style. Got to see them live soon after they released their cover of The Trooper, and their performance of that along with Black Thunder reminded me what is so infectious about them. Best thing to come out of clicking on an Angry Metal Guy Reviews Best of 2023 article on a whim, learning that Zoth exists. Speedy, mellow tech death with sci-fi theming works pretty well. Exogalactic follows this formula with really cool standout high-pitched licks during choruses and phrases. Nice to hear some stuff that plays homage to classic Melodeath while also having unique details to their sound. One of the definite contenders for favorite album 2022, if not the 2020s so far, Damnum by Allegiant is a masterpiece in progressive melodic death metal, though one might notice taking a bit of a different approach from most of the rest of their work. That is not to say that their other albums aren't melodic or this album is lacking technicality, but the atmosphere and theming is certainly unique to this one compared to their others. It really does invoke the album's namesake, Damnum being Latin for loss. The majority of the songs are fast-paced, riff-fest, usually with mood-setting intros and conclusions. Sweeping solos pepper the project. Feelings of despair, isolation, and anger come through the song titles and lyrics. Some vocal hooks peek through the speedy playing and get stuck in your head, such as from Of Beasts and Worms. The Dopamine Void Part 1 is an amazing introduction to the latter stretch of the album, with spacey melodic tapping sections and melancholic vocals, transitioning nicely into a faster Part 2 to continue the narrative. Saturnine contributes to the loud yet empty aesthetic constructed thus far with tremolo picking. Only Lost concludes the narrative as one may have suspected from the title. Still melodic, but with chord progressions that leave you feeling uncertain or uneasy, alongside lyrics of The Ossuary Lens has been a fun listen so far. This one definitely takes a bit more from their usual style. I especially like Dark Matter Dynamics with the acoustic intro. It's just a lot more of what Allegiant is known for, with the super technical playing, melodic solos, and heavy riffs. I still can't get over how my introduction to Lorna Shore was hearing Immortal being played on the speakers in a shoe and skateboard store in the mall. I really don't remember much sticking out to me when listening to the full Immortal album, but the title track was definitely enough to get me to check out Pain Remains at the end of 2022. That one is another contender for favorite of the 2020s thus far. I will admit the songs are pretty formulaic. Tremolo picking and down-toned rhythms, guttural breakdowns, and soaring solos describe pretty much every song on here. But they sure do the formula well, over and over. The titular trilogy ending off the record hits just right. Part 1's vocal delivery building up to and initiating the climax never fails to give me goosebumps, and sometimes gets some choking up going too, as I'm trying to sing along. Part 2 keeps the motifs, riffs, and solos going. And Part 3 provides a thematic conclusion regarding the parts before, ending not on an emotional and clearly decipherable expression of despair, but more dissonant and chaotic structures and a primal yet understandable scream alongside the motif delivered by a strings ensemble to portray the spirit of the namesake, only pain remaining after everything else has been said. Not sure if gent is not a genre. It's at the bottom of my periphery ranking currently just because it's the newest and I need more time to digest it fully. I certainly still like it and find a lot of why I like the band present. Wildfire's catchy yet dissonant chorus and jazz portion leading into the end of the song. Atropos is probably my favorite off the record with its super melodic chorus, softer vocal sections, tapping solo after the first chorus, and thick open note riffing. These first two tracks, along with a few of the others, do make me feel like they do a bit too much of the super heavy chugs and sustain notes and chords as finishers for the songs, but that isn't to say there isn't a lot of fun and variance here either. Wax Wings harkens back to songs like The Way the News Goes with its melodic licks and has a powerful ending with the lyrical motif of
Machines are turning me.
Silhouette is a cool, slower electronic track to provide respite from the overall high levels of djenting, and this lighter sound continues once the guitars turn back on with Dying Star. Love me some Hades, so it's obviously very cool to hear the band does as well, and crafted the song Zagreus around that appreciation. That
Will it ever be? Will we ever live another day in honesty? 'Cause we're falling apart right from the start, you and I.
is infectious. Thanks Nouveau is a shining closer, and yes, I chose the word shining because of the reference to Periphery 3 that they make with that. Metanoia definitely has that good old technical progressive Persephone riffage. The direction they took Consciousness Part 3 is much different than Parts 1 and 2 from Spiritual Migration, but I can see it still fitting into the narrative of the saga since Part 1 is a more chill vibe that leads into the higher octane Part 2. Part 3 being almost 10 years removed from them does make it hard to automatically include it aside from name alone though. Metanoia isn't as concept driven as Shinken, Kore, or Spiritual Migration, but that's not a necessity really, as Truth Inside the Shades does really well despite not being explicitly conceptual. It has some great tracks that stand well alone, like Merkaba or Katabasis, and it does end on a progressive note with the three-parter Anabasis. Lingua Ignota is probably at the bottom of my list for Persephone picks. It is only an EP and doesn't have the time to build an amazing story or vibe like many of their full albums. I may need to listen to it a few more times to get more into it. Definitely didn't dislike it, but nothing stands out in my memory about it yet besides the chorus of one word. Between the Buried in Me has often been a band in my catalog that I do really like. I think I've seen them more times than any other band at point of recording, but I find my enthusiasm for them does not match that fact on an average day. I really only got into them after Rocksmith 2014 added Selkies as DLC, and that song along with Mordecai are masterworks in shifts and conclusions. Most recently I got to see them perform their Come Alaska tour, and hearing Alaska in full in particular for me was simply magical. Now then, for their work released in 2021, Colors 2, is BT Bam doing what they do. Lots of punchy riffs and melodic hooks, broken up by the errant bass solo or cowbell interlude. Definitely like the first Colors more, but the motif, Human as Hell melody, and the aforementioned curveballs provide an enjoyable ride regardless. Caligula's Horse did some great prog rock work through the 2020s with Rise Radiant and Charcoal Grace. It took me a few listens and seen them in concert a couple more times, but I have come to love Exil among the rest of Neil Viscaris' discography. Equus hooks you with a systematically discordant riff before the violin kicks in to guide us along with large guitar chords into a more reserved acoustic line. The clean vocals have a chance to shine until they bounce off the harsh vocals within a beautiful chorus. The band engages in the art of swift yet impactful changes throughout lengthy compositions, such as punchy guitars, drums, and growls, after the dreamy atmosphere of the chorus. In D as a whole, the album fulfills the goal of delivering majestic, progressive melodeath. Another gem I discovered just browsing the new tab in Apple Music in 2022 was Psy's Shiki album. After listening to it, I knew I had to check out the rest of their stuff, and they exceeded expectations by having such a storied and varied catalog to digest. Some airing more on the side of Black and Death, some being more experimental and proggy, and all having interesting sounds to take in. Shiki perhaps leans the furthest into Japanese folk themes compared to the rest of their work. Kuroi Kage sets up a mysterious dark vibe at the start. The tempo gets kicked up with blast beats and tremolos in Shouja Hitsumetsu. Satsui Geshi no Ato is just one example of their ability to craft incredibly dynamic pieces with shifts from atmospheric trances to heavy grooves. Shoku is a fast-paced track with an amazing keyboard section in the latter half of the album. Even the times they slow back down on traps like Fuyugakuru or Mayonaka no Kai keep the engagement up, as the atmosphere and melodies prompt mystical imagery in your head and keep you wondering what comes next. I get what people are saying when describing Foregone as a bit of a return to form for In Flames. The acoustic opening certainly recalls passages from the first few albums, and as far as I can remember, there aren't any child choruses like from Battles, or, though I don't like to call people's art this without significant reason, cringe moments like This Is Our House from I the Mask. The two-part title track has a cool atmosphere with an echoey tone. There's a good balance of higher tempo songs like State of Slow Decay, alongside more mid-tempo stuff like Voices in the Dark. That latter track has a fun time signature and phrasing setup along with a smooth solo. A dialogue in B minor is a great title with a catchy chorus. Something about their more recent style I can definitely vibe to. Finally got to see Amon Amarth live recently, and with Cannibal Corpse no less. I love the jovial sounds of Hadron off their 2022 Great Heathen Army release, and was certainly something to chant, "Who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? Hadron! Hadron!" during that set. Saxons and Vikings is a fun up-tempo song. The lyrics are a bit corny, I think, even for the theatrical nature of the band, but they do seem to be having a really good time doing the song, so I can't really complain too much here. Great guitar solo too. Not that I dislike the songs per se, but there are a lot of mid-tempo tracks on this in a row, from the first track of Get in the Ring up until the 7th track of Saxons and Vikings. Though you can argue Dawn of the Norsemen right before it is a bit more of a fast track, with the fast drums and tremolo picking, I suppose. Kalma releasing a self-titled was fitting in that it's Kalma doing what Kalma does, just some good melodeath. Few things could have made me happier in the music world than all of Halloween's vocalists coming back together to write a full album showcasing their talents together. The self-titled album they put out may not be the best thing the band has ever done, but the fact that they made a thoroughly enjoyable product from start to finish with such a big group with all its changes over the years is nothing short of incredible. It starts off strong with classic power metal sounding Out for the Glory, and we get slight style changes between songs like Mass Pollution, Angels, Cyanide, and so on. The fan service is dialed up to 11 on Skyfall, when each of the vocalists gets substantial parts both dedicated to themselves and bouncing off each other. And then of course Hangar 18 is mentioned in there too, so there's that. Getting to see Helloween for the first time in concert, and it's the Pumpkins United singing Skyfall, cannot be topped. Doesn't reach the top echelon of Helloween records, but the self-titled album is an unbridled blast. Survive is a great modern power metal album put out by a band that has multiple lineup changes throughout its tenure, Stradivarius. The title track, starting it off, works great with its high mid-tempo. We Are Not Alone, I feel, is a cool fusion between the more late 90s, early 2000s power metal sound with the later 2000s, 2010s trance metal sound. Ending off with a longer epic in Voice of Thunder is a nice touch for distinguishing from the rest of the album. Camelot also still adding onto the pile of good power metal in this day and age with The Awakening. Angra, also showing power metal, still has some power left in it, with pounding riffs and melodic solos alongside acoustic-centric sections like in Vita Secca. As the opening track on Rock Believer suggests, Scorpions does in fact still have some gas in the tank. Shining of Your Soul showcases their mastery of minor melodies and is one of those quintessential Scorpions elements I absolutely adore. Seventh Son I also really like for similar reasons, though in a different presentation. But there are also some brighter, faster songs like Roots in My Boots and When I Lay My Bones to Rest that show that they still like to up the tempo at times, even over 50 years into their career. When You Know Where You Come From is a nice melancholic closing ballad that Scorpions is also well known for doing. Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs by Alkaline Trio was a contender for my favorite record of 2024. Mid-tempo melancholic pop-punk sums up the project pretty well. The main melody in Meet Me is captivating with the tone of the sustained notes. I like the vocal delivery throughout the project, Versions of You being a good example of how they managed to make the singing sound both staccato and smooth at the same time.
Nobody ever touched your heart to take a push. You just took one in the gut. Now it's already up and out there. So many versions of you.
Teenage Heart is on point as a closer for such an album, with some tongue-in-cheek descriptions of issues in the US.
All I want for Christmas is an AR-15. My stocking stuffed with fentanyl.
Shoulders was probably my favorite single of 2021. The entire album of Vaxis Act 2 isn't super high in my rankings of Coheed and Cambria albums, but it definitely has its place. The Liars Club becoming a concert mainstay at this point is actually pretty fun. Rise Nyanasha has a cool main riff, and the album ends with a longer track as expected in a progressive concept piece. Vaxis Act 3 actually captured my attention a bit more. Blindside Sunny was an unexpected high-tempo single to introduce the project, and its placement on the album right before Play the Poet results in an almost unnoticeable transition. The first few songs on the album that come before those two are mid to high tempo hits, Searching for Tomorrow probably being my favorite of that bunch so far. Miriam Mercy is a bit of a slow burner before getting into Blindsides and The Poet. One Last Miracle is a catchy piece. Corner My Confidence is the acoustic ballad that I can tell Claudio has a lot of passion behind. A four-parter ending the project is exciting to hear, evoking thoughts of the Good Apollo albums. The chorus of Tethered Together especially sticks out in my head, remembering what I have latched onto so far from this album. Glow On by Turnstile is a set of short, sweet, and to-the-point punk songs with crossover into spacey, atmospheric elements. Mystery's mid-tempo anthemic vibe going straight into the faster, punchy Blackout works amazingly. Underwater Boy is a relatively relaxing track to have on the first half of the record, only to head back into the ringer with Holiday hitting hard again. A few more punchy tunes take place, Fly Again being another favorite of mine with this fun chorus to sing along to. Alien Love Call again brings the tempo down for a spacey emotional break. The rest of the album sticks mostly to the higher tempo style with some dynamics in the form of breakdowns or fade outs and ins. Just a solid record through and through. Their recently released Never Enough is largely following the formula of Glow On, but I need to listen to it more to give a more complete opinion on it. Volbeat's Servant of the Mind had a few catchy songs like Shotgun Blues, Dagon Fur. The Metallica Black Album Worship was turned up to 11 on the Sacred Stones. Weezer released Van Weezer and The Seasons albums in the 2020s. Quite like Van Weezer as just a little bit of cheeky glam rock and metal stuff. Summer has my favorite track off of all of these projects though in Records. It's just a really catchy rock song. In the Court of the Dragon from Trivium has some decent tracks. I like the chorus and solo of Sword Over Damocles. No Way Back Just Through also has a catchy chorus. Saw Malevolence open for Trivium a couple years back and quite liked what they had to offer. Downtuned riffs with cool little melodies off of Malicious Intent. Especially love the On Broken Glass chorus guitar and vocals and the ballad Higher Place. I clicked on the Callous Dowboys when scrolling Apple Music purely due to the fact that one of my friends and I would very often engage in spoonerisms, including specifically, well, the Callous Dowboys, due to him being a Dallas Cowboys fan. Very happy to report they slap really hard. God Smiles Upon the Callous Dowboys starts off strong with Pushing the Pink Envelope, a swift down to power chord riff and bright synths, going into a breakdown with harsh vocals, then speeding back up to do somewhat of a chorus, though it's hard to tell if it really is due to the ever-shifting structure of this song and, for that matter, other songs they do. And the vocalist pulls out what I hear as an amazing impression of Adam Gontier from 3 Days Grace. The tennis match of melodies and breakdowns continues towards the ending of the growling Waco Jesus takes a bit more of a straightforward path, employing even more 3 Days Grace and alt metal and general vibes. Interesting chord progressions and beat changes during the chorus. Hard for me to choose a favorite off of this 3-song EP, but it probably does either go to Pink Envelope or The Closer, Designer Shroud of Turin. I feel like some might criticize this song as gimmicky due to its utilizing multiple genres and styles in quick succession, but it does fit the band's image as a whole being all over the place. I think going from genty, proggy riffs and note plucking and sliding into a, I don't know how to describe it, bouncy, funky chorus, later on into saxophone trills and hip-hop vocals, tumbling further into Latin rhythms and steel drums, all to come back to those same riffs and chorus just works. The vocal hook of Nostalgia for the 2000s goes super hard in its delivery, and also due to being a child growing up during this time, that very much does mentally implode on himself when thinking about playing Ruby Sapphire Emerald, listening to Collective Soul and 3 Days Grace, remembering such moments as Season 4 of SpongeBob starting and Avatar: The Last Airbender concluding. Pretty sure the intended meaning is to look past nostalgic feelings, but oh well, I'll get to it when I do. Definitely have enjoyed the singles and the first full listen of the I Don't Want to See You in Heaven album. Distracted by the Mona Lisa hits completely on point of what I again hear as 3 Days Grace callbacks, so great to hear a song like that on here. Lemon is a very nice chill track. Love the atmosphere, chorus, and the build up that happens very slowly and then explodes at the last iteration of the chorus. Great stuff. And Two-Headed Trout, of course, is amazing for sampling Ocean's 12. And by Ocean's 12, of course, I mean the Counter-Strike Foon video. Argent Moon was a nice EP from Insomnium in 2021. The classic low-tempo Melodeath sound is there, but no standout bangers the likes of While We Sleep or Neverlast. Anno 1696 was an interesting concept piece they released a couple years afterwards. It's a good composition, but I do need to give it more listens. I would say maybe I just like them doing songs that stand alone better, but then again I absolutely loved Winter's Gate, and there are melodies that do stick out if you do listen to it, I'm sure. Probably just need more digestion. Scorched Earth by Harakiri for the Sky is likely the front runner for 2025 releases so far for me. The atmosphere created by the sustains and tremolos on the melodies are relaxing, thought-provoking, and energizing all at once. The vocals being largely shouted as part of the cacophony of instrumentals gives a sense of being one entity within the vastness of nature and beyond. The main melody of Keep Me Longing enters my head pretty often. No Graves But the Sea takes a swifter approach that can pass as a Melodeath track. I love atmospheric music, but it oftentimes does feel as though it is relegated to just being that, the surrounding background with limited direct impact. This project bridges that gap and manages to feel very engaging as well, kind of like Insomnium at the top of their game. Locrian released a bit less atmospheric but still very atmospheric piece in End Terrain, and I like how the first song off of that gives very similar synthy attacks to that on the Calistal Boys Pushing the Pink Envelope song. Moonflowers was a cool 2021 release from Swallow the Sun. I learned about them when they opened for Children of Bodom in 2019, and their melancholic, melodic doom sound is entrancing. Moonflowers has mostly these low-tempo vibes with some higher tempos popping in on tracks like Keep Your Heart Safe From Me and This House Has No Home. Enemy is the song that pops up in my head most often from this one. Shining in 2024 was more of the general sound they are known for, but need to give it more listens as nothing stood out to me immediately on the first listen. If you like doom metal, Oceans of Slumber is great. They're very similar to Swallow the Sun in that sense, so check them out if that sounds interesting to you. Hololive has released a lot of music in the 2020s, so I'll just focus on a few of them. Ghost by Suisse is definitely one of my favorite Hololive tracks. Marine's Unison might be my favorite of hers due to its unique sound. The only song I can think of that has a close vibe to it is I Think We're Alone Now. The minimal instrumentals complement her front and center vocals to give the feeling of both a liminal space and emotional warmth at the same time. Kali and Gura had a really fun, fast-paced collab on the song Q. Watame's Revival and Mume and Fana's It's Not a Phase were probably my favorite songs from 2024 from Hololive. Shocker, I know, considering Revival's trance metal structure, and It's Not a Phase being a love letter to emo pop punk and rock. Gura's final song as part of Hololive has already been praised across the board, and there's not much more I can add to the conversation of how raw its emotional power is. Listen to Ash again if you haven't already. Some of my favorite non-Hololive musical artists have included Numi, Obe Katy Cat, Ava Ananova, and Cottontail. I found the AI SpongeBob streams quite amusing, especially the earlier ones.
August 12, 2036. Eat death of the universe.
Not as much a fan of the newer ones though. Feels like the skits became a lot more predictable or repetitive, like they would often default to sarcastic quips with each other, for example. Great use of SpongeBob AI voicing is being done by various uploaders, as well as our guy Glorb, though, for sure. The bottom two is an absolute masterpiece. Gary hitting us with the Squidward following up a fast with Ramadan. Mr. Krabs with a powerful amazing vocals all around alongside the melodic electronic track. My next favorite Glorbs is probably Ocean's 11, but it's hard for anything to come close to the bottom two for me, personally. I do enjoy the project as a whole for sure, and we'll keep checking out what they put out. Started watching Zuxid for the Edison format Yu-Gi-Oh content. Stayed for the, well, that, and also the fact that he's in a metal band and they have a song called King of the Skull Servants off of their Terrarium album. Check out Pet House for that. Critical's band, The Gentlemen, put out a really good EP. Hey, they got Andy Sizik to feature on this as well from Makari. Favorite off of this is probably Ghosts. I love the outright worship to early 2000s alt rock and metal. I mean, the chorus is just From the Inside by Linkin Park, like, come on. The Luigi's Mansion theming also gives it bonus points. I love the work Kenny Austin does with his The Excellent Man from Minneapolis project. Some real nice electronic pop pieces. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my time. Might be my favorite of his, but they are just really nice tracks as closers to his videos. I won't go into details so as to avoid spoilers for those waiting to play it in its entirety. But rest assured, chapters 2, 3, and 4 of Deltarune continue to showcase Toby Fox's penchant for creating immediately memorable and captivating compositions. As with Undertale, the game's leitmotif appears constantly, reimagined in interesting and varied ways. Tracks that do not attempt to follow the main motif also pull their weight remarkably well, though. Basically, Toby's still going strong and doesn't show any signs of running out of ideas. Speaking of video games, and even Toby Fox specifically, it was surreal to hear Pokemon got him to work on some of the soundtrack for Scarlet and Violet. The Terror Raid theme certainly sounds like Toby's work with its dynamic melody. The Team Star Grunt and Boss themes alike are phenomenal. Heavy power and trance metal stylings makes the battles sound more epic and consequential than one would initially think based on the story behind the team. That being said, the structure of the boss battle does lend a lot to the power emitted by the track, and once you start really getting into the story beats, it does feel satisfying that such emotional music is assigned to this mission. Legends Arceus took a much calmer approach to its soundtrack, similar to Breath of the Wild, but it fits with the quaint village and open nature setting. Pizza Tower's OST is likely a contender for the best video game music of the 2020s. It's Pizza Time is the perfect music for the high-octane situation of escaping levels before an insta-kill pizza face shows up. Each world and level has music curated for the theming, whether it be upbeat mid-tempo techno for a mini-golf course, organs and reverbed guitars alongside wolf and guns sound bites for a graveyard, or level select music that always invokes the anxiety felt by Peppino, but not afraid to throw in some steel drums if it's the resort floor. Of course, the final boss medley compiles all the chaos, volume, and melody reputation built up throughout the game for an immaculate finale. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk also has an insanely good soundtrack, with a great variety in sounds and styles and tempos, focusing around electronic, hip-hop, and funk. The Hades soundtrack as a whole is incredible, whether epic battle music or quaint shop music. However, I could listen to Good Riddance on loop and be just fine with that as well. Should go without saying, but of course this is not an exhaustive list, either of what I listened to during this time, or of, well, everything that came out during this time. So I invite discussion on things I may have missed that I might find enjoyment in, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on the ones I talked about here as well, so go ahead and comment if you'd like to.